Okay, pero mientras me curo, encuentro mi pasión.
Me encuentro yo misma.
I'm gonna fall back in love with myself.
And I'll be able to transform my pain into power.
I don't know how we'll do it, but we're doing it together.
We're your hosts of Mientras me Curo podcast. I'm Andrea.
And I'm Genesis.
Welcome to your guide for healing beyond toxic ties.
Welcome back.
Welcome.
So, quick update. We will be doing bi-weekly episodes. Life has taken a toll on us. We have been busy, all three of us. It's really hard to be on schedule. So I feel like I made the decision to be like, hey, we need to do bi-weekly just because I feel like we're overwhelmed with some work, life. And we want to make sure we bring quality. We're not just giving half-ass.
Yes. We want to,
effort. Half-ass effort. Sorry,
Yes.
I needed to finish my sentence.
So thank you everyone who continues to listen, because we see those numbers and we see y'all.
We see you guys.
That consistency and that love. And so just so you know, we're going to be every other week.
Yes, every other week now. And then we are going to be doing seasons. So this is going to be a season. And I believe we are hoping to have 20 episodes.
Yes.
And then hoping to start again. But we have yet to determine when that would happen.
Yeah.
So
that's to say, if you have not listened to the other episodes,
catch up.
Go and take it. So we're going to start off with a consejo de corazón. And the consejo de corazón of this week is, drum roll, forgive to free yourself.
Yes.
What comes up for you, amiga?
Learn to forgive yourself, because if not, you're going to hold a lot of resentment, and you're going to hold a lot of bottled emotions that are just going to take a toll on your mental health and your day. You're not going to be able to be your true authentic self because you have all these emotions bottled up.
Yeah.
My thing, for me at least, when that happened, is that I was really angry when everything happened, but I literally barely just had this conversation with somebody, and it had to do with learning to forgive them, not for them, but for me. Because if I hold on to like the resentment, the anger and everything, like it's just going to take a toll on me, and it might spiral into my new relationship that I'm in. So I'm trying to avoid that cycle. I don't want to break any, like I don't want to bring my past issues into a new relationship. And so learning to forgive somebody for the stuff that they have done for me or to me was a big step for me, because don't get me wrong, like I said, I'm still holding some type of resentment towards that individual, but more so because I feel like anytime that person tries to reach out, they're reaching out for certain stuff that we still have pending in the divorce. And like I feel irregulated every time that they call me, and I feel like I needed to learn to be like, hey, like everything they did happened. It is what it is. There's nothing I can do to control the past. And if I allow it to control my emotions for the rest of my life, I can fucking ruin so many things. I can self-sabotage a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I didn't want it to get to that extent.
I hear a lot of people say, I'm never going to forgive them. I'm never going to forgive them.
Yeah.
And like what you were saying, you don't forgive for them, you forgive for yourself. Because in not forgiving them, you are continuing to let them have that power over you.
Oh, yeah.
Over your emotions, over the experience, like you're holding it in, and you forgiving them is taking back that power. It's like saying like, you know what, like you did what you did, and I understand that it was you. And
it's a you issue.
Yeah, it's a you issue. And like, I just feel like forgiveness does, like, it sets you free, because you then are allowing yourself to move on. Because if you're not forgiving someone, if it's like a friend, right, or a partner, you are going to take that into your next friendship. And so in the long run, you're harming yourself more long term. So we got to work on forgiveness. I'm not saying forget. Don't forget it. So the topic of today is we're going to talk about trauma bonds and trauma bonding.
And how that takes a toll.
Yeah.
And how it works. And who's more prone to that. All those things.
Yeah.
And I was like reading these right now because I was like doing my little research while Jen was like getting herself together. But I was like reading them, and every single time I read it, I was like shocked every single time. I was like, oh, I literally told the girls, I was like, is this story about me?
So let's start with like, what is a trauma bond? And one thing that I want to highlight is I think that there is a very, very common myth when people say, oh, we're trauma bonded. People think that it's a trauma bond if you went through something traumatic with someone, and so now you're bonded, and that bonds you, right? Like, oh, we trauma bonded because we were both in the same car accident, whatever. That's an example. A trauma bond, what it actually is a connection. So a bond, a connection between two people where one person is the abuser or an abusive person, and the other person is the target of their abuse. So a trauma bond is you're literally bonded because of the trauma that someone is inflicting in your psyche or psychology
on your day-to-day
in
life.
your life, in your day-to-day. What do you like? Is that shocking to you at any way?
No, because it was my cycle. It was a cycle that I was like used to.
Yeah.
So it felt normal to me. So no, like it doesn't shock me.
That could you say now that you felt trauma bonded?
Yeah, I've said it before. I've said it before that I was trauma bonded to this individual because of all the stuff that him and I experienced.
Exactly.
And it's just like I also didn't want to let go of the time that I had with that person because it was 9 years. I was like, I didn't want to let it go. I was like, I tried my best to try to keep it together, but that person just kept like disrespecting me on so many different levels that I was like, no, like.
It's actually in our biology, like in our brain, neurologically, we're kind of designed to want to see through things, like see things through. So a lot of people, they also stay for that potential for like, will things change? Will I put in all this effort? The completion.
Yeah,
they
because you know what it is?
A lot of the girls they feel like their investment wasn't worth it.
Think of this. So a lot of the girls that don't leave those relationships, because that was me at one point, was like, I didn't want to leave because I'll be damned if somebody gets him the way that I like.
Like the man that I
not even created, because I didn't create them, but the man that I've experienced so many things with, that I have literally like the better version of himself, although it was a shitty version still, like the better version, like it's gonna suck if I like decide to finally leave and I see this person moving on and they're finally get their crap together. That was gonna piss me off so much. I was like, there's so many times that I thought about that and I was like, no, like I'm gonna stick it through. And then like I feel like it finally snapped in my head where I was like, this person isn't gonna change. I was like, and they're still continuing their behavior. I was like, it's a trauma bond because of the stuff that they promise you too. I was like, and that's something I feel like you're going to be talking about pretty soon in this topic. But yeah.
So something that like people who have experienced childhood trauma, essentially a trauma bond is an attachment bond. It's something that you're attached to. So if your parent was abusive in any way, or if you have a certain bond with them that's toxic, you could be more susceptible to that. So take us through, because I have 7 stages of what trauma bonding is.
Let me
and you have
share
what kind of person, like
what person is at risk of a trauma bond.
Like, whoa, I'm listening to this and I'm
like, is this me?
Am I capable of being in a trauma bond?
And there's nothing wrong with it if you are, because I was once there and I made it out and here we are, thriving, living life to the fullest. So risk factors for trauma bonding, and this is from Online Choosing Therapy, says people with dependent personalities, anyone who puts a lot of value on the good times and quick to forgive. That's huge, because that was me. Anyone with history of being abused in childhood or past relationships, people with disorganized, anxious, or avoidant attachments, people with tendency to question themselves, even despite strong evidence that that suggests that they aren't to blame. Existing mental health concerns such as depression. What was this one? BPD?
Borderline personality disorder.
And anxiety.
So, And
then also people with separation anxiety, which is a given, obvi. People who are sensitive to rejection. And that is very, like, what I remember when I was reading these things, I was telling the girls, I was like, is this story about me? I think I just said that, but, like, legitly, now that I went through it, I'm just like, oh, that's me. Some of them are me, not all of them. But, yeah, I feel like I worked on it a lot.
Are there any that you read that you felt like really resonated?
For sure.
I know you said, like, the dependent
personality, for sure, because I feel like I've already disclosed that I was really codependent on this person, not just for financial gain or financial stability, but also, like, I felt like I couldn't do anything without them. Like I had to be with them 24/7. Like I couldn't breathe without them. Like I felt like, not even that I couldn't breathe without them, but I felt like the only fun that I ever had was that with that individual. And even then it wasn't even fun because like my girlfriend just told me we're hanging out and she's all like, because I told her about the person that I'm currently with and that I spend so much alone time with them and that I'm okay with it, that I'm happy with it, that we do so many things, we have conversations. That person that I was with, we could never have a conversation. I remember you telling me like, I'd tell you about the conversations that I would have with my person and you're like, yeah, you're actually having like one-on-one conversations versus the time that I was with that person. It'd be so awkward to just be us two in a room because there was nothing to talk about. We'd just literally be on our phones or watching TV. Mm-hmm. So it was...
Well, it sounds like it was like dependent, right?
That's why.
On the material stuff.
Exactly. So just...
But dependent personality overall is someone that is just in their personality is to depend on. Like I am not a dependent personality at all. I like to do things independently. I actually like to spend a lot of time by myself. I like to go places by myself. And so, yeah, so it speaks to that, right? Like, if you're more inclined and you're okay, and Michelle, too, is, like, nodding with me because, like...
She's independent as shit.
Yeah, she's also independent. Mm-hmm. And not to say that it's wrong to be independent or dependent. It's just good to know, right? Like, if you know that you are dependent...
I know I am, yeah.
And honestly, I see it, too, in our friendship.
Yeah.
I think that there's certain things that you're dependent on.
On
where
you?
It's like, yeah. So, yeah. But I could see that.
Yeah, I'm very much that person, but... I'm working on it a lot because it takes a lot of me to be like that person, and I can probably hang out for like 7 days straight, and I'm finally
because that's emotional dependency.
Yeah, and I was like, and I can finally feel it. I'm like, I get mad when we do take space from each other because I'm like, I feel like him and I had this conversation where he's like, hey, we need a break. Like, not even that much of a break, Jen. Like, it was literally 1 or 2 days, but I was having a freaking like, I had my panties in a bunch. That's why. And so now I know that I was like, you know what, like it's needed. And sure enough, I like when I did take those days off to myself, like I did a lot of things that I couldn't do when I was with that individual. Like I was like, oh, it gives me time to do this and this, you know. So in the long run, I was busy, I was occupied, I was fine, but I did miss them. I was like, dude, I want to be with you, but I know that this space is healthy because down the line when we're like, he speaks about that, like when we move in together or that chapter comes, like we're gonna be with each other 24/7. Then we're not gonna have that space, and that space is required for like our personal growth too, you know. So yeah.
Okay, so these are the 7 stages of trauma bonding. What we kind of get bonded to is we start to attach to the dysfunction. So we're not really attached to the person. It's not the person that we're bonding with. It's the dysfunction that is going on. So that's why it could be hard when you leave a relationship like this to be in a healthy relationship because whatever that person is doing that is healthy, it's going to feel like it's not going to feel like love. It's going to be like, well, if you loved me, you would be dysfunctional, right? I don't know if that's something that comes up. So these are the 7 stages of trauma bonding, kind of how it can come about. And it's cyclical, so it repeats. So the first one is love bombing, which there's a lot of like discourse on love bombing. Essentially, this person comes off like they'll usually be the ones to pursue you. Even if you're saying no, they're going to be persistent and consistent in that.
But it's not like a regular persistent and consistent. It's like a freaking concerning one. No.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is honestly, I was having a conversation with one of my clients and we were talking about this because essentially they were like, oh, like I've been telling this person that I just want to be friends and they keep asking me. That persistence. If someone is weird. At first, if you tell a guy specifically, but even a girl, if you tell someone I'm not interested,
that's it,
and they continue to persist, that's often romanticized in our culture or in our society of like, oh, if they're making an extra effort, that means that they really want me. But listen to that initial why you say no. I think that that's so important. Yeah. Because it leads to, we start to romanticize it, and that's where we become susceptible to being love bombed. Is like, oh, we start to see it as like really good. And some of these people are really, really good at hiding who they are. So I want to validate that too.
Yeah,
that's the first one, love bombing. Do you feel like you were love bombed?
I feel like I wasn't love bombed in the beginning, but I was love bombed whenever there would be an issue that came about.
Okay.
Like whenever a cheating scenario would come around, like, and that's where I told you the love bombing would be like, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna work on this, I'll give you this, I'll give you this, I'll buy you this. So yes, but not in the beginning. In the beginning, it was very much like, I feel like we were just young. We were really young, and we just
like fell into it. Almost.
Yeah, fell into it. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, he saw me at the freaking Starbucks and then fell in love. I didn't fall in love either, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool, let's test this out.
Yeah. Okay. Love bombing. The second thing is developing trust and dependence. So the dependence part could look like where it's really drastic. They start putting things like you under your name, or like you start to move in with them. All these ways where they kind of take away ways so you can be independent. That's where building the trust and dependence comes in.
Mm-hmm.
Of like a trauma bond, where you kind of have to rely on them for something.
Which I did.
Yeah.
Financially.
Then the next one is criticism. So then they'll start to criticize you. It'll start to feel like, do they hate me? Like, do they not like to be around me? Like, what am I doing wrong? Even if it's the littlest thing.
I don't think I feel like I ever experienced the criticism. If anything, I felt like, I think I mentioned this already too, is like the amount of times he cheated made me insecure about myself. So I started.
So you guys really did not talk?
Like,
because
no.
I'm surprised that he didn't criticize you. I'm actually like
it's dead ass. Like, no, like he wouldn't. Like, even my, like, right now, the partner that I'm with, I will tell them, they'll be like, dude, you don't, like, you're so affectionate with me. I was like, that's kind of weird. Like,
that's such a mind F.
Yeah, because like we wouldn't even like.
I could see how it's like.
Like, we weren't affectionate in public either, or even in front of other people. Like, holding hands wasn't a thing.
Nunca te dijo nada like talking down to you, or like, oh, the type of like criticizing who you are.
And it doesn't have to be like insults, or like it can be very.
Yeah, very like passive aggressive, or subtle. Like the ones that are masked as like it's supposed to sound like a good thing, but it's like not. Unless this man was mute.
No, like, we wouldn't really, like, I am telling you, amiga, like, when I say him and I wouldn't have conversations, like, I mean that. Like, I am telling you guys, we would not, like.
It could even be, like, joking around.
No, like, he wasn't like that. Like, that's the thing. He hid it all behind, like, because I feel like we didn't have any good conversations. The only conversations we ever had were times where he cheated on me, or times where.
But when he would cheat, what was his reasoning?
He'd own up to it. Like, he'd own up to it there. He's like, oh, yeah, like, I'm shitty. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I shouldn't have done that. And then it's just repetitive.
Oh, it was that type of, what is it?
Yeah, and it's just like, it wasn't, like, he never talked down on me.
Mechanism.
So, like, but I will say, he did talk down on me to other individuals, not to me. Personally, he never talked to me. No. Later, and then it came, and then I would hear it.
See, that's criticism.
So that, yes, he would, because he would tell all these females that I was the issue.
In front of you, he was playing a certain role.
Exactly.
That's what kept you.
He was very good at not like. He was good. He was really good at being that person of like not talking down on me. But there would be times that he did disrespect me by calling me out of my name when we were like getting into arguments. Likewise for me, I called him out of his name, and the yelling and everything. And like there'd be times where stuff was said, but I don't feel like he was ever saying things that were criticizing me with the type of woman that I was. Because overall, he can tell you that I was a good woman to him. Like I was really good to him in a way where. He just wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to own up to the shit that he was done. And like we had that conversation at the end of our relationship where he told me like you were good to me. Like I feel like he knew that I was good, and like he just felt really bad for all the shit that he put me through. Like he sincerely like apologizes, but I don't accept it. I don't want to I accept it, but it's just like I just don't want to think about that stuff anymore. Like that was in the past, and I get that, but like not necessarily that he would directly tell me these things. I know he would go and tell other individuals about it, and then it'd come back to me. So not that he would criticize me directly, but other females.
Yeah, which is even worse because he's not saying it to your face. To me, that's giving a little two-faced.
That's giving
because it's like
high school vibes.
Like, and then you find out that these are all the ways that he actually thinks about you from
and that's what I would tell him. I'm like, dude, that's embarrassing. I was
ashamed.
like, you're speaking about me to these females to get sympathy from these females. I was like, and then when they call me and I tell them the real spiel of what's really going on, they're like, oh my gosh, like that's not what was told. And I was like, of course,
it's victim mindset.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did.
Okay, so the next one is gaslighting. That's a part of the cycle. So 7 stages. We have love bombing. Starts with some love bombing. Developing trust and dependence. Then the criticism starts. Then the gaslighting starts. Then resigning to control. So essentially, that's where like the being in control of certain things. This could either be like physical control. That's kind of sometimes where the person who is in the bond that's being abused will also start to submit to that control, essentially, like sharing location, or I don't know, things like that.
I feel like for me, that was the opposite, where I took control into that and I wanted to freaking have his location. He didn't really care to look at my location. I checked his 24/7 because I wanted to avoid any other cheating. But I learned down the line that didn't really do much. So
the next one is loss of self. So you start to lose yourself. You don't know who you are, because you're dependent on this person a little bit. And then you get that addiction to the cycle.
Yeah.
Because during all of this, any time that there is a very, dopamine is released, anytime we get this, like,
I've heard of this already.
instant gratification, kind of. That's like, it's
It makes
like
you
the
feel
gratification.
good. It's like that one thing.
Yeah. So
And I
when this
remember
person
that.
is doing something so intense, right? Like dysregulating, like traumatic, not only that, but when something traumatic happens, it makes you feel more isolated from the people in your life, because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm going through these really intense stuff and people can't relate to it.
Yeah.
But then because this person, like the love bombing brings in that dopamine level, like, oh my gosh, I'm loved so much. And then the really like traumatic stuff happens, and then things are okay. Like all of that is switching up your whole like brain chemistry to become addicted to this repetition of stuff.
Agreed.
And that's what creates the
cycle.
trauma bond. The attachment to like, feeling addicted. So I do see this with some clients that like are leaving these relationships. They kind of go back to a similar type of behavior that they're receiving from someone else, because they're used to it.
That scares me, because that was one of my biggest fears, bro. That was one of my biggest fears, was that I was going to fall back into it again with somebody else like that. And no.
Yeah.
I will not.
Yeah.
Will not. I read the room. I saw the signs, and I said, absolutely not. I'm not going to be going through this again for a second time. And, you know, I choose a different for myself and my future.
That's good. I think because there were so many things in your environment, like your support system.
I had a like whole village of people, everything. Like, and I will tell them, like, and they would tell me like some things, and I just like, no, like they're very protective of me, is what I say. Yeah.
And I feel like it is rare to, like, with people who are in these relationships, they become isolated from these people. So there's even that factor where you're just like, you were able to have these conversations with people. Also, you work in a mental health office, facility, you know, like, so that already, like, I'm starting to learn, like, people do not talk like how I talk. Or like how other therapists talk. Like, to have so much empathy, like, that is, like, really important.
Of course.
And, like, how awesome that, you know, you had all of these buffers, too.
Yeah,
you know?
I've had everything, like, against me, but I'm not going to change the type of person that I've been destined to be.
Destined. I love it. Steps to break free from these trauma bonds, okay?
These are
so
good,
we know
Jen.
what they
I
are.
want to know what these are.
Yeah. We know what they are. We know what that person might look like, right? Who might be susceptible to
Insert
this.
picture now. I'm just kidding.
Okay, so the first one, educate yourself. Like, honestly, to break free from a trauma bond, you need to know what is going on. That is, listen to podcasts, you know, that are giving you signs and symptoms of trauma bonds.
That we got here.
If you need to take classes, like, join support groups, read books. But
books are something I picked up.
Yeah. Like, when we have knowledge to these things, we're not going to be as, like, oblivious to it. Like, we're not going to be as, like, oh, like, I didn't know better. But sometimes you do need to go out there and, like, learn why is this happening, you know? Even a Google search. I have a PhD in Google. I literally Google everything. And it's been so helpful. Like, literally, like, why does my boyfriend treat me this way? I don't know. The next thing would be to take a pause. Like, really, you've taken in all this information, and now it's kind of pausing and actually seeing what it looks like in your life. Like, understanding your circumstances, understanding, is it easy for me to leave? Is it safe? Is it not? Right? Like, all of these things help us make a better decision in moving forward. The next one would be to, gain clarity by doing this. Like, try to gain some clarity around, that's where I do feel like, what was someone saying? One of my clients was just like, isn't therapy supposed to make me feel good? And I'm like, no, therapy is so that you understand yourself. I can't fix any problems for you. It's just so that you know why you're doing these things for you, because then you have your own power to make your life better. It's really just to empower. So gain some clarity, try to go deeper with someone, pay attention to yourself. So what are you doing in these moments? I've said this before, like, pay attention to your body language. Like, how you feel about people right away if you just pay attention to what your body is doing. It will tell you. That is how I know how to read vibes very, very well. And I can tell when people haven't healed, because I can feel it in my body. If I'm feeling like, and I give people the benefit of the doubt. Like, I'm a therapist. Like, I'm here to, like, love everyone, but some people you love from a distance. Pay attention to yourself.
I love her.
We got to stop magical thinking. Life is not like, oh my gosh, this person is going to completely change. If they haven't shown you any ounce, if they continue, like, we got to stop seeing it through this, like, magical lens. Like, I'm going to have my fairy tale, because then it's going to keep you in that cycle.
Yeah, it keeps you there.
Yeah. I saw you had a strong reaction
Hell
to that
yeah,
one.
because that's what it was for me, the potential. You're, like, looking forward to what they can and say they're gonna be, but they're not gonna do it. If you've been with them, like,
you
for me,
to
for
get
instance,
sold on the dream or the illusion.
Yeah, like, I got sold on, like, promises that I wanted. I wanted the bigger picture. Like, I wanted it all, and I was willing to take it with this person. And then the fact that they were just like so, like, they talked about it so much that I believed it, that it was going to be so good, like, and so good to be true. They're finally going to stop cheating. Like, they're finally going to be focusing on themselves. They're going to stop drinking, like, all of the above. I'm like, sold. Why wouldn't I want it? That's the biggest picture. That's what I want.
Yeah.
The white picket fence. And then, like, every other month there'd be something going on with other females. I was like, nah, this isn't going to change. And I dealt with it for 9 years. If he's doing it for 9 years, what makes me think that he's not going to do it for another 5?
Yeah. We gotta, like, that's,
you gotta break it.
Yeah. Like, essentially, it's easy for us to escape into the future, the potential of the future, what we hope for. And I don't know, I think I mentioned it earlier, we're like creatures of wanting to see out things. We want completion. That's why grief, like losing someone, is hard for most people. That's why death is hard, because there's this sense of incompleteness that sometimes we're just not going to understand. And because of that, I think it's easier for us to focus on, like, the outcome. But if someone's not changing, then that outcome is literally just like, it's not going to be the best for you.
I get it. I've been there, done that.
This one's important. This next one, don't go cold turkey. Don't go cold turkey. Because it, like, if you're able to and you're just like, all right, I'm just gonna,
you're
like,
a bad bee and you can
one
do
to
it
the
by
other.
all means.
But it is so hard. It's hard to leave a healthy relationship that is just like you outgrew. It's gonna be even harder and unrealistic to be like, okay, I'm just gonna, obviously, unless there's like violence and you immediately need to leave, but also for your mind, it does need to adapt and it needs to understand. So it's gonna be a slow process sometimes, and that's okay too. And then the last 2 steps are find mental health services, seek professional help. Talking to the therapist is just so valuable.
Plug therapist.
It is so valuable.
Now available.
As a first generation, like, master's graduate professional in this way, I myself was like, why do people need therapy? And I'm just like, no, wait a second, because what therapists have to offer is like something you can't just get with a friend or a family member. So seek professional help. And I promise you, well, I can't make any promises, but it will get better. And then the last one is to find your community, which you've also said too, kind of helped you, like, step
back into my roots.
Step free. Yeah, get back into your roots. find your community, find people to support you, find women who like you just feel good vibe with.
You know what I recently like had found out when I got out of this relationship, which I had joined? I joined up a couple of Facebook groups that had a lot to do with like domestic violence type stuff. So yeah, plug in the groups on Facebook.
A lot of resource centers like in your community will have these classes. So find a community, and that's it.
Yeah,
Those were
and
all
that's
the steps.
basically it for this episode. It's more...
Thank you for listening. This was a little bit more informative.
Yes, more factual stuff.
Yeah. And I want to end it with, when we talk about trauma bonds, like, it's just important to do your research. Like, don't just take in information, even from us, right? Like, if there's something that you hear, don't just take it in because we're saying it. Question that for yourself. Seek, like, try to seek that stuff for you too, so that you feel good about your next steps. That's where, like, gaining your clarity.
Yeah, and that's basically it, guys.
Yeah, thank you for listening to this episode of
Mientras me Curo podcast. We're just all over the place. Please ignore us.
Let's end it one more time. Ready?
Thank you so much for listening to
Mientras me Curo podcast.
Yes, Jen, thank you for ending it for us.